All right. All right. We waiting on something from the other screen to pop up. Here it is. Looks like all right, so everything's in order. All right, my name is SUNI, and I'm coming back with another video that I did before. Matter of fact, this is the third one. And it's called, the title of this one is called AANA 12, AANA 12 Step Experience. And the title is Light Workers. Who are they? And the purpose of this here video right here is to, from my perspective and my experience in 12-step recovery, is to identify and talk about light workers. And this term is, in the past, I would say year or more, has become very popular. A lot of books, a lot of videos about light workers and who they are. So in this particular piece right here, I'm going to talk about light workers again. Like I said, and this is my third video. And I watched the first one, I watched the second one, and I felt I just want to go into it a little bit deeper. So let's get into this thing. You know, I identified before in the previous video that I have, it's called just light workers. I identified the light workers as a person who has a strong desire, or what did I say it was? A strong desire to help people. You know, that's what they do. And they don't care about your race, your color, your religion, your political affiliation, gender, none of that. You know, they are people who have an honest desire to help other people, to help humanity. The light workers are. And so I had identified some of the character traits or personal traits of a light worker. And I'm trying to get I'm working with a new microphone because my rig is in the shop. So I had to go out and buy a microphone. So anyway, some of the character traits of a light worker is, number one, they're not special people. There's nothing special about them. You know, they don't have wings, or they ain't been, resurrected from the dead, or, they're not, prophets and stuff like that. They're just regular people. And they are very highly intuitive. They're very highly intuitive. And they've come through personal struggles. They've had trauma in their lives where they actually work through trauma. And they don't like to be looked at as, they don't fall up on a different title like lawyer or doctor or garbage man or millionaire or poor person, although they can be, from that. They could be a doctor. They could be that your average person on the street. They could be a homeless person. So they could be anywhere to somebody like Bill Gates to somebody like Trouble on the street. But I won't say Trouble. That's a dude I used to know a long time ago. Rest in peace. But somebody that's a homeless person that's still struggling, and we're going to talk about that, those type of people and what makes them light workers. So anyway, moving on. And this titleless name in the 12-step modality, healing modality, and I do look at the 12 steps as a healing modality. These people fall up under the title of anonymous or anonymity. They practice anonymity, but they're titleless. So that's why they are called anonymous. Now, let me say this right. If y'all hear a lot of background noise, that's because I had to go out and I had to buy a mic because my mixer, my Rodecaster Pro, is in the shop, and they're dynamic microphones. So I had to settle for a USB microphone that's condenser. So anybody with knowledge, seeking any compensation, what's happening is this is a part of what makes them who they are. They have no interest in the physical world. They have no underlying. They don't care about the Dow Jones stock market. They don't care about what's happening in Europe. They don't care about none of that. But that's not to say that they may or may not have a stock portfolio, but that's not their main purpose. That's not to say that they won't be worth $1 million to $2, but in this life, that's not their purpose. They'll be willing to give all that up for their fellow human being. And so moving on, they feel connected to the highest power or the highest source or the God, for the sake of, they feel very connected to the quote unquote God source. However they may identify. In the fellowships, we call that the God of their understanding. So moving on with that, and they could be from any walk of life. Yeah. They could be black, white, Asian, Hispanic, Jewish, Catholic, Muslim. They can have no religion at all because they have an understanding. And remember what I said, they're not special, they're different. And they could have came along a religious path, one of the religious path. But they, at some point, a light clicked on and said that everybody's the same. But let's just say almost everybody. Excuse me. But everybody's the same. So so moving on, what makes a light worker? Now I'm gonna refer back to the part where I was talking about personal trauma and struggle. What happened is, so what happened is that the individual, through their dealing with personal trauma, they have learned to develop or get through their trauma by using spiritual principles. And they have developed a keen sense through using spiritual principles. And when I talk about spiritual principles, I'm talking about love, faith, service to others, charity, hope, compassion, patience, tolerance, honesty, open-mindedness, willingness, anonymity, and they've also learned the power of being empathetic. Now, everything that I just mentioned from the 12-step perspective are powers. They are definitely powers. And they're powers greater than the individual. Once the individual has learned mastery over the principles. So the light worker has become a principle-centered person. They're a person of principles. They learn how to live principles. And what happens is humility, a certain degree, or a degree, they have elevated themselves. And I ain't gonna say they have, but through the use of spiritual principles, have elevated themselves to the point where they understand spiritual principles and they tend to live a spiritual life through the practice of spiritual principles. And that's why certain things doesn't make a difference to them in the worldly life, you know. And like I said before, they'd be willing to give all that up if they were materialistic. They would be willing to give up all materialistic because they understand that it's not the material that makes the human being, it's the principle. And it's not when the physical body passes, it would be the practice of spiritual principles that will see them through into the next dimension, which is the fourth dimension, the fifth dimension, and so forth. And so moving on. Moving on. Oh, and one character trait I left out is that these people have the ability to live in the here and now. Because a lot of us, and I just say us, our ability to live in the here and now is hampered by our wants and our desires. Let's just say wants and desires. I mean, living in the third dimension, or what we call the here and now. We have a lot of distractions. We have food. We can have sex. We can have technologies, cars. All these things can pull a person from or what's called distractions. They're distractions from the spiritual world, and then they can also bring up other types of negative character defects like envy, resentment, anger, fear, all these types of negative effects that leads a person through dark stages, or what is some people call the dark side, you know. So being attached to the material element or material elements inside the world could very hamper the individual. So moving on. Light workers. Who are they and what are they? One prime example of a spiritual worker was, in my view, was Mother Teresa in the 20th century, you know. And I'm just saying one person, you know. I would go on to say Malcolm X, or President Kennedy, or, you know, it would depend, and I have to say this though, because people come from, I'll throw in Gandhi too, because people come from different backgrounds and they come from different journeys and experiences through life, you know, therefore certain people, certain people is going to be, you know, like when I was coming up, you know, we had like Martin Luther King, we had Rosa Parks, we had Gandhi, we had Malcolm X, Elijah Muhammad, Marcus Garvey, in my mind, Rosa Parks. Yeah, we have, Mother Parks. We had, I think of a few as we go along, some of the major abolitionists. See, in my mind, based on from my experience and where I come from in my history, these were white light workers because they was trying to take people that were in darkness and bring them to a certain point of light. So moving on, in these modern times, I can't identify too many, and I'm saying it as far as, and it's what October 8th, 2020. You could say Bill Gates, but I don't know. Then you could say, the man down the street downtown, living in the corner in the cubby hole, But anyway, moving on, I want to talk about the 12-step process. The 12-step process. So what happens in the 12-step process, a lot of people that come from or who are involved in the 12-step process that travel the path of light, of spirituality, of wanting to help their fellow human being, and come from traumatic experiences, drugs, alcohol, overeating, gambling, sex, and let's just call it addiction. They come from addiction. So what happens is when they when they come into the rooms of 12-step recovery and they meet people and fellowship with people that travel the same road as them, and then they get into the step process and the 12-step process or this 12-step modality for healing, and they reach a certain amount of healing, what happens is through the step process, spiritual awakenings are happen. Spiritual awakenings occur that begins to rebuild and shape the character of individuals that's on this 12-step journey. So what happens is, as one begins to awake spiritually, and what they in turn want to help somebody else. They in turn want to help somebody else that went through the same fate that they went through, the same trauma that they went through, and they got over it. And they understand that it wasn't the drugs, it wasn't the promiscuous sex, it wasn't the gambling, it wasn't the alcohol. Did I say the drugs? Yes. It wasn't the overeating. Those were symptoms of a greater problem that was spiritual in nature. And as a result of a 12-step journey and the application of spiritual principles, what was most likely developed was resentment, anger, and fear that kept these individuals down, or kept the individuals down. Through the healing modality of the 12-step and the 12-step fellowship, the person began to experience what? Healing. Then as a result, empathy developed, and then certain principles like that I had mentioned earlier, and I just pulled my little book out, like empathy, like unconditional love, or agape love, and I really want to pull them up. Here we go. And hope and compassion and patience, tolerance, open-mindedness, willingness, anonymity, love, faith, and then as a result, a service to others. One of the steps inside the 12-step process says Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to addicts or alcoholics or those who are addicted to sex or gambling or overeating. So we try to carry this message to addicts and practice these principles in all our affairs, you know. And what's that basically saying is I'll become service to others. I'll go out and I'll help somebody else if I can. And what I'll take with me is the tools that I've learned in the process or continue to learn in the process. And this what brings about not only hope for the individual, but it brings out hope for others. Thus, the term light workers. Light workers bring on hope to other people. And it's and what they understand is the principles that they're practicing is not theirs. You know, there's another step that says we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And it says we came to believe. So they came from hopelessness to a hopeful situation or position, that a power. And remember, I just listed several spiritual principles. And spiritual principles are powers greater than oneself. They are examples of powers. And there are many more, very much many more, you know, but these are a few that I listed. So this being said is that the light worker has understand that these powers greater than themselves restored them to sanity. And what was the insane what was the insane situation that they were restored from? From a traumatic situation, from a situation that affected them mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally on all four areas. And these are the areas that make up the total makeup of the human being: the physical person, the mental person, the emotional person, and the spiritual person. And this is what's happening inside the 12 steps. Inside the 12-step healing modality, and this is what I'm going to call it, a healing modality. What's happening is the person is being what? Reborn. They're being reborn again. And what's going on inside this rebirth, another person is emerging mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. This is what's taking place. Now, I want to take a little time and I want to kind of like bring something up, you know, that was on my heart. That's on my heart right now. Not was, still is. You know, as a result of the COVID situation, what I was looked at, what I looked at was the 12-step process, not being able to make meetings like I want to, going on Zoom and phone calls and stuff like that. Something in my 34 years and 4 months and some change in recovery that I never thought I would ever see. I never thought that it would not be a meeting. It was going to be a AA meeting, a NA meeting, a CA meeting, a FA meeting. It was going to be some type of a meeting going on where a person can go and talk about steps and getting better. A person can go on, they could go and what? And fellowship. And fellowship. And fellowship. But what has happened and what has been revealed is that anything can happen that'll close a meeting place down. And just like recovery is a miracle and the meetings rooms are miracles, a miracle can be taken away. Well, I ain't saying all miracles, but those miracles was. And what I had to do was, what happened was, this situation is taking my recovery to a whole nother level. I'm at a point now where I don't look at the divisions anymore. Because what COVID, this whole COVID situation has shown me is that no fellowship, whether it's Narcotics Anonymous, whether it's Alcoholics Anonymous, whether it's Fellowship Anonymous, whether it's Sex Anonymous, whether it's Gambling Anonymous. When meetings went out, would have let me know that nobody can stand on their own, not one fellowship. And if anybody had a problem about which one was better, yeah, everybody had to go on Zoom. Could nobody meet? And so those egos that are out there talking about who's better and what's what. When COVID came, it was a power greater than all meetings, all fellowships. Yes, sir. It was great. COVID was greater than all fellowships. But one thing COVID wasn't greater than, the 12 steps. Because the spirit of recovery, a power greater than, see, we came to believe, and when I say we, I use that we mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally, not in a fellowship collective. So we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And part of my insanity was thinking that I always need a meeting place, so my fellowship was better. COVID said, nah, you stay at home and get you a Zoom account. No, you stay at home and look for other ways to elevate your recovery, to work on your steps. And now I went out and this is where I'm at now. I never thought I'd be in a situation like this and doing this here, doing it like this here. And so what has been shown to me as a result of in the recovery process and saying, okay, God, you know, what's happening? And when I'm talking about God, I ain't talking about the pie in the sky. No, I'm not. For my agnostic and atheist brothers and sisters. What I was taught when I'm talking about is when I say God, I mean the ultimate power. The power over everything. Yeah. So anyway, moving on in this situation right here. And talking about light workers. Who's a light worker? I'll say, from my experience and coming from the 12-step perspective, the person that's practicing steps, the person that is trying to help somebody else, that's trying to carry this message, not only to themselves, are light workers. The person that's going over step by step by step by step by step, by tradition, by tradition, by tradition, by tradition, is a light worker. The person that's working on their own selves to develop their own anonymity, to develop their own honesty, their own open-mindedness, their own willingness, their own faith, their own hope, their own charity, and so forth through the 12-step process are the light workers. And the light is the spiritual principles that's embodied in the program. That's what the light worker is. And they are the person that have an intuitive understanding about the program and understand that it's not encased into one designated fellowship. This is the light worker. The light worker that understands that, like I said before, that all human beings are connected, and so is every program. Every program. 12 AA is connected, like NA is connected, like Fellowship Anonymous is connected, like Sex Anonymous is connected. Why? Because they all have symptoms of addiction. And they all have the same spiritual principles of what? Recovery. And the only thing that's different in them all is the big I am. Yeah, is the big I am. What will happen as a result of the light worker getting the light from the source is that their faith, their hope, and their fears are less. Well, I'll speak plainly. Mine is anyway. My fears and my hopes are lessened. So anyway, wrapping this up, the title is AANA, a 12-step experience. Who are the light workers? The light workers are the ones that work the spiritual principles, not only in their lives, but every other life, but all others' lives or everybody's life. That they're not unique, nor are they special, but they are different. That they are the ones they are the band-aids of humanity on the spiritual side. So moving on and closing this out, my name is SUNI, and this is what I'm going to be doing. So I like to say, I got a new mic, and it's a condenser mic, which I really didn't want, but I'm hoping to serve as person. I got the washing machine and the dryer, and everybody walking upstairs. I'm quite sure you can hear it, but So if you like what I'm putting down, yeah, please hit the button down there, wherever it's at, and I hope to see y'all in a couple of days. I'll come out with something else, and thanks for